Beloved siblings in Christ, grace to you and peace from God, in whom we rest, from Christ, in whom we are redeemed, and from the Spirit, in whom we are restored. It's not all about you. Perhaps you've heard those words directed at you when you have been particularly stuck on yourself or insistent on your ways. Christopher has a gentle way of doing that with me, and I'm grateful for it. Or perhaps you've heard them in the context of being reminded that there is a larger context than the individual. It's not all about you. Those words can either be joltingly jarring, bringing us back to our senses in shame, or joyfully freeing us from the burdensome bonds of a self-centered orientation or outlook. St. Paul writes in our second reading today, we do not proclaim ourselves. We proclaim Jesus Christ as Lord and ourselves as your slaves or your servants for Jesus' sake. As we transition in these weeks into the season of summer, we are reminded in all our scriptures this morning, it's not about you. So just give it a rest. Take a break from what you do. And remember who and whose you are. Rest, reflect, and remember to Sabbath. Wait, did I say that right? Remember to Sabbath? Verb? Isn't the third commandment remember the Sabbath day, noun, and keep it holy? Yes and yes. You see, just like the rainbow was God's idea first, after the flood, giving all of creation a tangible promise in the sky that yes, all creation, no exceptions, all creation was universally beloved of God and never to be condemned, but only to be loved, only to be embraced, only to be saved. Even so, the Sabbath, both as noun and as verb, were God's idea first. And in fact, God took the first Sabbath for God's self. For as we recall that story of creation, God arrived at the seventh day and checked out all that God had made on the previous six, called it all good, and then said, you know what? I'm good. I'm taking this day off. That was the seventh day, the first Sabbath, a day of rest, yes, even for God. Literally a sabbatical in one day, a day or time set apart for rest and restoration. Why? Because we are not only what we do. Who we are most essentially is quite something else other than what we do. And Sabbath is for embracing whatever that something elseness is about you. It's not all about you. What a gift of grace those words can be when we hear them coming from God to us. What a gift of grace those words can be as we remember the Sabbath day, as we are doing today, and calling us to return to all of our senses, to stop, to look, to listen, to inhale and exhale, to breathe, to get in touch with the holy, to taste and to see that the Lord is good, and that we are good, that we we are good apart from what we do. To get in touch with God's pride of ownership, God's pride at having created you in all your glorious quirkiness, in all your beloved uniqueness, in all your irreplicable wonder. For you see, as St. Paul goes on to write in our second reading this morning, quote, "We have this treasure in clay jars, earthen pots, so that it may be made clear that this extraordinary power belongs to God and," here it comes, "does not come from us." It's not all about us. The Sabbath gets us back in touch with that truth, and Jesus reminds us in today's gospel, which is good news, that the Sabbath was made for us, for humankind, and not the other way around. It's a gift of grace to stop and to Sabbath. And since we are transitioning seasonally, I'll put it to you this way, to summer. It's just another way of saying it, perhaps. These clay jars of our bodies need rest, need need restoration, so that we can continue to be vessels that God can use to transmit the treasure of God's grace through our clay pots, through these vessels, in our own unique, inimitable way. Our Synod Assembly these past 2 days, with the theme, the unity of the church, reminded us that it's not all about us as a congregation. And by the way, thank you to our President, Stephen Johnson, and to Mary Tabata for going on our behalf as voting members. But we heard that it's not all about us as individual congregations, as this particular congregation here on the corner of Lincoln and Washington and Santa Monica, but that we are one with other communities in our region. Congregations, for instance, like Grace Lutheran Church in Bell, as they house 45 refugees from an African country called Mauritania. We are part of something bigger. We are a part of that ministry, not just our small but mighty, almost 100-year-old congregation here in Santa Monica, but we are in a synod of 130 congregations, and not just a synod, but a church-wide organization called the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, extending our ministry here to the hungry and the hurting and the helpless of the world. But not just a Lutheran church, not just the denomination, not just the ELCA, but beyond those labels and flavors. As our Bishop Brenda Voss reminded us in her sermon at the opening worship yesterday, we don't have to get it right, but just be the vessel and watch what God does. It's not all about you. It isn't. So give it a rest. Hang it up for a while. Take a day. Take an hour within your day. Take some time. Get away. Away from what you do and into the Sabbath embrace of who you are, an embracing reality of rest, of reset, of rejuve, of restoration. Remember the Sabbath day, whenever that is for you, and keep it holy. God gives you this life-giving commandment and the promise that Jesus will never give it a rest